Good morning. Yes, sir. What's up? Nope. Parking is free for the bed making competition. Yep. It's where I think it's SAISD. They play all their basketball games. It's right there by the zoo parking garage. Alamo Stadium. Yep. And then the basketball, yeah, in the basketball court area. Exactly. Yeah. So plenty of parking in that area. Um, my goal for today is to get through chapters 2 and 3. Okay. We are not meeting on Thursday because in class because of the volunteering, and so we will meet at the Alamo Convocation Center, which is where the basketball court is, and over by the zoo. I've posted the announcement in Canvas, so you can download that map and see that. Next week on Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be focusing on chapter 4. Okay. Um, chapter 4 is really kind of about looking at how we can analyze what we're doing, and how we can kind of present the results of what we're trying to accomplish, so that we can essentially be able to make better informed decisions moving forward. Okay. And part of chapter 4, one of the biggest assignments for chapter 4 is we're going to be doing some working in Excel. Okay. So raise your hand if you have no experience working in Excel, like zero experience working with Excel. You have no idea what I'm talking about when I say Excel. Okay. Somewhat. Cool. That's fine. Raise your hand if you've never made a chart or a graph in Excel. If you've never made a chart or graph. Okay, cool. That just gives me an idea of where we're starting with. So part of your assignment, you're actually going to be creating multiple graphs, and then you're going to create your own. You're going to create your own graph, as part of the assignment. Okay, and so I want to, like I said, I want to get through chapters 2 and 3 today, which I think we can. It's going to be pretty much a high level overview of the information. Um, and then we'll get through chapter 4. Um, the following week, next week, we'll have class, remember, Tuesday and Thursday like normal. The following week, we will not have class on Tuesday or Thursday. Okay. And the reason behind that is if we look at the calendar, next week is fine. The 23rd and 25th, we are not having class. Okay. 23rd, remember, I try to keep my classes on schedule, on the same schedule. And since I'm not having class on Tuesday night, that means I'm not having class Tuesday or Thursday for us. Okay. And also, I'm thinking on the 25th. No, I take that back. On the 25th, I don't even get in until like 9:30 anyways. So my plane doesn't land until 9:30, even if it's on time. So, but if you are in my front office class, 1313, we are having class that day. Okay. So keep that in mind on Thursday the 25th. All right, let's jump into chapter 2. Um, for me personally, I really enjoy the concepts and the topics of management and leadership. Um, it wasn't until my class, one of my classes I took at A&M San Antonio, I took an organizational leadership class in my last semester, and I also took training and development. So those two classes combined are the classes that convinced me that I wanted to be a teacher in some capacity, whether that meant like corporate training, like my sister did for Valero, or whether that meant doing team building and working on communications, which is what I did with the Boy Scouts for a while. Um, but I wanted to teach in some capacity. I had no idea what that meant. And then once I got more into it, I think as an adult learner, it seemed really interesting to me to reflect back on experiences that I'd had and realize why I reacted in some ways and why I maybe gravitated towards a different person versus somebody else. Um, and so I hope that's why a lot of the assignments that I have when I created this class is those reflection to think back. Okay, now we're learning the theory, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why this person did that. It's not because they're a whole horrible person, they're a horrible manager, they're a horrible leader. It's just because that's their style, that's what they do. Okay, and some things are more effective in some situations than in others. And so we're going to talk through chapter 2 and 3, how that leadership and that concept of management has changed over time. And there are some people, especially in our industry, that I feel like they are doing things the way that their manager taught them, which was the things that their manager taught them, which is the way their manager taught them, right? And so they're really kind of just coming up the ranks and doing what their manager taught them, and they're learning from what their manager did. And so as our leadership and management evolves and changes, how do you guys how can you think of, or when I talk about the change of leadership and management, and how we approach working with our staff, what's one example that you can think about, like in the hospitality industry, maybe specifically in the culinary field? What's one major change that has happened with how the leadership reacts to and deals with their staff and their associates? There's one that I have in mind. See if you can read my mind.
Communicating consent.
Okay, so communicating. Okay, so it has to do with communicating. Okay. So what is the traditional, when you think of the word traditional, how is the traditional way that chefs usually talk in the kitchen? They yell, right? And that, I mean, think about Gordon Ramsay and Hell's Kitchen and how he's yelling at the staff all the time, right? Um, that necessarily isn't always the best way to motivate people to do something, right? Now, we still have to correct behavior. We still have to make sure things are correct and things are the way that we need them to be, right? But less and less, you're seeing that traditional chef, that yelling and screaming chef. Um, and so that kind of shows the difference, the shift from management to leadership. Um, and so we'll hopefully we'll see some of that as we go through. Now, let me take a second. I just redid this slide this morning, and that's not very effective. So let me bold everything. That's a little better. Okay. So in the management responsibilities, okay, there is these different activities that you are going to come across or be able, you're going to be able, basically be able to execute these different functions of leadership. Okay. Question, this slide, is it visible or not? Okay, cool. I'm thinking what I might do, and do this in real time. 1, 2, 3. All right, is number 1 or number 2 better? Sorry, the eye doctor joke. Okay, so these are the first 3 of the 6 planning functions, or functions of management and leadership. You, as the leader of the organization, of the department, of the team, okay, you are involved in setting the direction and planning what the organization is going to do, setting those goals. Remember, we want those goals to be SMART. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relatable, and time sensitive. Okay. And so then basically you are going to identify how are we going to achieve those goals? How are you going to organize your teams? Think about that activity we did on the very first day of class with the personalities. Okay. Which colors are you going to put together to make sure that our goals and our objectives are easily reached? Okay. Every organization has limited resources. Okay. Very rarely does an organization have unlimited resources. What are some examples of resources that an organization has to achieve its goals? Money is one. Okay. People, and those people usually have a limited amount of time that they have to spend on accomplishing that goal. Okay. And so you as a leader have to figure out, how do you effectively use those resources to make sure that we can implement our plan? Okay. Coordinating with our HR department, our human resources department, what needs that they have. Is there any additional training or staff development that needs to take place in order to achieve our goals? Okay. If we want to reduce the number of customer complaints, we might have to look to see what the complaints are about. And then how do we implement more training to reduce those, to address those specific complaints? Okay. The day-to-day operations as a leader, right? Typically, if you are, let's say, the CEO, the GM, whatever, you are not down at the front desk usually directing a front desk agent on what they need to be doing to be more effective. Okay. Usually that front desk agent has a supervisor, or they have a front office manager. Okay. If you're in the kitchen, if you're a line cook, the executive chef may not come to you, but there might be somebody else that's more of a senior position, maybe the sous chef, that's going to come in and communicate the message from that higher leadership. Okay. And so that day-to-day stuff, you're not necessarily directing that, but you are having some kind of meeting with all of your leadership and say, okay, this is the problems that we're experiencing. How are we going to address it? Okay, this is our decision, what we're going to do. And now you guys go to your teams and you communicate to your teams how we're going to address this issue. Okay. And so it's really important that you have the right people in that, in those management positions as you are, as you're going higher up. And then lastly is the controlling. And that's what we're going to talk about in chapter 4, is assessing our performance, assessing the results of our goal. Okay. We've talked about gap analysis in here, right? What is gap analysis? Daniel. Okay, yeah, where we are compared to where we want to be. Okay. And when we start a goal, maybe our gap is pretty wide. And then at the end of our time period, if we don't achieve our goal, that's okay. But we can hopefully reduce that gap and now figure out, we reflect on what went well, what allowed us to close the gap, what didn't go well, and now let's change that so that we can continuously improve and reach our goal. Okay. Questions about the functions of management? How many of y'all realize your managers do a lot of this stuff behind the scenes? Okay. How many of you do not realize this? How many of you think, oh, my manager's just sitting in their chair, eating bonbons, eating candy, just in their office, not doing anything, and I'm out here doing all the hard work? Okay. Sometimes we get that mentality. But they are doing things, hopefully. The other thing I will say very quickly before we move on from this, actually, no, I'll mention it some other time. All right. So the different roles that we have as managers. Okay. The different roles that we take on. The first one is interpersonal, how we work with other people. Okay. You can't effectively manage by sitting in your office doing nothing. Well, doing stuff, I should say, not doing nothing, doing stuff. You have to be visible. Okay. If you're sitting in your office and people don't see you, they're going to assume that you're doing nothing, right? If things aren't really getting done and things aren't moving and progressing, they're gonna be like, what is this person doing? Um, and so you have to, in hotels, oftentimes, um, we talk about how a general manager of the hotel, although they're busy doing meetings and they're having different, they have different appointments on and off property, but they also need to be visible. You have to manage by walking around. You have to lead by walking around and allowing people to see you. Okay. Sometimes you have to be that figurehead of the organization. Okay. So you have to represent that organization. Maybe you get an invitation to attend a meeting, and this is what the meeting's about. And so you attend as the figurehead of that person, of that organization. So informational, that role, our role is to give information. Okay. So again, most hotels have what we call daily stand up. Does anybody not know what daily stand up means? Okay. Antonio, tell us what daily stand up is. Yeah. And then from there, they get that information that then needs to be disseminated to their respective teams. Okay. We have a big convention coming into town. And so they're all checking in on Wednesday. All right, housekeeping, do you need any additional things? Sales, how can we help housekeeping? Sales, how can we make sure that the front desk is prepared and ready to receive all of these people to attend this conference? All that communication is necessary in order for things to go smoothly. Do things still go wrong? Yeah, absolutely. They do. You can't prevent every single um, crisis, but we still want to be prepared. And so, as that informational role, you are constantly gathering information and then figuring out, processing it, and then disseminating that. Okay. Um, move on to the next. All right. Sometimes, as a manager, you have to make decisions. So, the decisional role, you have to decide how are we going to respond in this specific situation. We have an upset guest. Okay. The guest is upset because their steak was cooked well done when they wanted it cooked medium. So it's too done for them. Okay. How do we respond to that situation? Okay. So we go talk to them. Excellent. So the manager comes over to the table. Hi, how are you doing? I'm the manager here. I'd like, my Jake, just let me know that there was an issue with the steak. Is there anything I can help to resolve the issue? Okay. Or if Jake is empowered to say, you know what, let me fix that steak. So it doesn't have to come and ask for the manager to say, hey, what do I do? Oh, the steak is overcooked. Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me go ahead and get that taken care of. And then while the steak is being prepared, then Jake comes up to the manager now. Hey, can you stop by the table 42? The steak was overcooked. We're in the process. So the manager walks up to the situation. Is there anything I can do? Can I get you a cup of soup? Can I get you something in the meantime? Maybe a salad in the meantime while you wait. The steak is being prepared again. We'll have it out shortly to you. And so you are the ones who kind of sometimes handle those. But if we can empower our staff to be able to handle those by themselves, then that kind of helps you as a manager alleviate a lot of that stuff. Does that mean that our staff doesn't come to us when they fix something? No, they still have to come tell us that they fixed something, right? Because if I don't know that that's something as an issue, then oh my gosh, we've had 4 steaks that were returned this shift. And if my servers just upon themselves gave out free soup and free salads, that's great. I appreciate that you're doing that, but I still need to know about it so that I can address the root issue. The root issue is I don't want to give out soups and salads. I want to make sure our steaks are prepared the right way the first time. And so the manager is usually the one who has to handle that. And then typically, if it escalates, right, to a point where our frontline staff, our servers, our front desk agents, our bartenders, they should not be dealing with the brunt of an upset guest and the frustration of an upset guest, right? They're not paid enough to deal with a rude customer. And so if you notice that it's escalating to that, then you need to be able to ready to step in and manage that situation, and take that away from that frontline associate. And again, that's where managing by walking around comes into play. If you just sit in your office with the door closed, then you're never going to know when those things are happening. All right. So, different skills that managers need to have. First one is conceptual. How do we see the bigger picture? Because if when a server is working, what is the server focused on? What the server is doing, right? They're not focused on the busser. They're not focused on the fry cook or the saute cook, right? They're focused on their job only. But then as a manager, if we can take a step back and see the big picture, that allows us to figure out what we need to do to make things better, or what are we doing right? What needs more improvement? Okay. So going back to that example of the steak that's overcooked, the server is only looking at the fact that my steak is overcooked, right? And it's my steak. But then if Moses is over here in this section and he has 2 steaks that are returned, right? They're just looking at their own specific situation. The manager has to be able to look and see the conceptual big picture. And then we have to work with people. How many of y'all like to work with people? How many of you do not like to work with people? Okay, awesome. So back office is a good place for you. Okay, accounting maybe, IT. IT still has to work with people, but you know, often that's the thing I love about hospitality is there is a job for everybody. Okay, there is absolutely a job for everybody in our industry, but as a leader, you have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to communicate with people as well, okay, effectively. That includes our customers and our guests. Those are our external customers, but we also have internal customers. Those are our coworkers, our associates, our colleagues. Those are our internal customers. We still have to take care of them as well. Okay. I think it was Mr. Marriott that said, if you take care of your associates, then they'll take care of your guests. I think that's a great mantra to live by. The last one is technical. How many of you, by a show of hands, have ever had a boss that you're like, I don't think you've ever done my job before? I don't think you've ever done my job. I don't know what it is, but as we get further away from, like, let's say a GM gets further away from being a server, it's like they almost forget what it's like to be a server. The further you get away from that frontline position, do I need to talk a little bit quieter? Excuse me, hold on one second. What's up?
No, if that's any other car, he's about to get towed because they parked on the side of the street.
Oh, okay.
Just in case it's in the grass.
Hey guys, there's a car that's right here, parked right out front. That's like a silver or gray color car. It's parked on the wrong side. It's about ready to be towed. So if it's yours, you're excused to go and get it. Don't be embarrassed. It's parked on this side of the street instead of that side. So I think it's blocking. It's nobody's. I'll close my eyes for 30 seconds. Okay. No judgment. I just want to make sure you don't get your car towed because that's not an expense you need to incur. Okay, cool. No one here. So technical skills. We still need to have those technical skills. Those are what we call the hard skills, right? Skills that are about the job. Soft skills are your interpersonal communication, things like showing up on time, having a positive attitude. Those are your soft skills. Technical skills we still need to have. We need to make sure that we understand that. Um, that's why so often, like, um, for me, if I have a student that comes to me with an issue, I will often ask them, can you tell me what the resolution was? Right. I don't, if it's like with schedules or things like that, they go over to the advising. Tell me what the advisor told you so that I know and I can either try to help that student, the next student that comes up, or maybe I can even fix it before they even have to go over to see an advisor. Right. So I like to know a lot about a little bit about a lot of things. Traditional management styles. Okay. This is going to be another reflection opportunity. Okay. Autocratic, basically, it's my way or the highway. You're going to do it because I said so. Bureaucratic is by the book, right? If we think about our case studies from last week, that United Flights Airlines flight, they were going by the book. The book said, I need to have this seat for this passenger, for this crew member, and so I got to take this person out of this seat. They're just going by the book. They're just following the rules. Okay. And then democratic is really looking at the process overall. And then what can we do to maybe allow people to be more successful, take on part of the responsibility. Okay. Um, when I first started teaching, or when I first started working at TGI Fridays, I was 19 years old. I was uneducated about the amazingness of a medium rare steak. I did not know the difference in cooking temperatures. So I always forgot to ask my guests how they wanted their steak prepared. Okay. And so then I had a trainer who told me, well, just put it in as medium. That's right in the middle of the road. And now I've learned there's a huge difference between medium and the other temperatures, especially medium rare and well done. Um, and so ultimately, my boss, Kristen, she's like, David, I need you to be part of the solution. I need you to remember how to ask, or I need you to remember to ask people how they want their steak prepared. And so she gave me my little like TGI Fridays little folder for my server, a bright neon pink index card that said meat temperature question mark. And so as I'm writing my notes, all of a sudden I see this bright color out of my side. Meat temperature, meat temperature. Oh yeah, you have a steak? How would you like your meat prepared? How would you like your steak prepared? Okay. And then eventually I didn't need that. So that was her allowing me to become part of the process and part of the learning. And then once I learned that, I didn't have to ask that. I didn't have to have that cheat code anymore. Um, and so it's really important in a democratic situation. That's the one when we talked about I believe last week, where we talked about involving everyone from all levels of the organization in the planning process. Because that server or that line cook knows better about what can make their job more efficient and easier for them to do their jobs than the person who is so far removed from that position, right? Um, so who can think about a time when you had an autocratic manager or leader? Anybody can think about a time where you had an autocratic person? You don't have to share any details. I'm just letting you give you a moment to think about it. What's that? Autocratic, yeah. That's my way or the highway, right? If you don't want to do it my way, get out. Okay. How effective is that in motivating people to be part of the solution? Yes. Yeah. It's interesting you bring up Pizza Hut. This is not Pizza Hut, but it's pizza related. I was listening, I think it was a reel that I saw one day when I was doom scrolling and I should have been doing something else. Um, I They were talking about this small pizza owner, and he wanted everything to be in the exact same place. So no matter which pizza shop that you walked into, the pepperoni was always right here, the sausage was always right here, the bell peppers, everything was in the exact same place, right? And the podcast that they were on, they were talking about, they were basically saying, well, what about, like, what, why does it matter if the pepperoni is here or the pepperoni is over here? If in your neighborhood, or your region, where your pizza shop is, okay, if sausage is more popular than pepperoni, or if bell peppers and banana peppers are more popular than black olives, then put that up front so people can be more effective as they're making the pizzas. Why does it matter that it has to be in this order? If all the ingredients are there, what difference does it make? Um, and so that's that autocratic style. And you, as a manager, if you have that autocratic style, you are going to exhaust yourself. And then eventually you're going to just drive everybody away. And then you're going to have nobody to make pizzas. Okay. Just because you had to have the pepperonis right here. Okay. Um, Same thing goes with that bureaucratic. Okay. Just following by the book. Well, I don't have an explanation for you because this is what the policy says I have to do. Okay. Sometimes we have to go by that. Okay. You can mix these up. There are situations in a kitchen, for example, if somebody is doing something that could potentially cause them harm or somebody else harm, okay, there's no time to argue. Well, I feel like I should pour the pasta water out this way. No, this is the way you do it so that you keep yourself safe and you keep everybody else safe. Okay. So there are opportunities for you to mix and mingle these different styles. Okay. Um, 4 different leadership theories that we'll talk about. One is the personality base. So, how do we inspire people? How do we get people to want to follow us as leaders? And a lot of it is personality based. We also have situational leadership styles or theories, leadership theories, where our staff is either dependent on us, meaning I'm going to say, okay, now you need to cut the potatoes this way. Now you need to do this way, versus our staff and our associates are independent thinkers and we can delegate. When I was the cook up in Maine for the summer camp in 2008, I had an assistant cook. Um, she was a she was doing her externship from the Austin Community College. And I was like, can you set up the salad bar? Well, how do you want the tomatoes cut? I don't care. How would you have tomatoes cut for a salad bar? Or can you there was something else that she did, and she'd always ask me, how do you want this? And I'm like, okay, I can't be directing you all the time. I've got stuff I need to be doing. I need you to not be dependent on me, or I need to show you once or twice, and then I need to know that you can do it by yourself. Okay. And so sometimes we do have to do that direction. If it's not right, after the training, that's where coaching comes into play. Okay. So training is the time that you're going to learn that skill. And so that's great. You're here, you're learning those skills. Very rarely do you get to learn a basic food prep, the skills that you're learning in basic food in the industry in the format that you get to learn it here. That for 6 hours, you have a lecture and then you are working on just this one task. Okay. Today you're going to debone one chicken. When you get to the industry, you have 2 hours to debone multiple chickens. Okay. And so very rarely do you have that opportunity to kind of have that one-on-one training, but that's going to help you be successful when you go out into the industry. Coaching. And we want to be supportive. That kind of go back to that example with Kristen and the steaks. She noticed that I kept making mistakes. So she coached me, she supported me through that. And then after that, I was more independent. I didn't have to rely on that. So I think the only thing is, so in 2007, I baked cheesecakes to go sing at Carnegie Hall with the master singers I was singing with. I baked and sold enough cheesecakes to pay for my whole trip. And so when I went back to cook in Maine in 2008, they're like, oh, we need to have some of those cheesecakes. So I gave her my recipe, and she had to make 8 cheesecakes, and they each took 1 cup of sugar. So she took a 2-quart liquid measuring cup and filled it with 8 cups of sugar. And then she did this and checked. At the end, she had 8 cheesecakes and still 1 cup of sugar left. And so somebody came in, they're like, ooh, are these David's cheesecakes? And I was like, no, these were Tiffany's attempt at making David's cheesecakes. I claim I claim nothing for these. I was like, they may be good, they may not be. I don't know. But in that situation, I realized when I saw her with that 8-cup measuring cup, I should have been like, hold on, no, that's not how we do this. We have 1-cup measuring cups. That's how we're going to measure. Okay. The last 2 is transactional versus transformational. Okay. Transactional. You did a great job. I'm going to give you a reward. You didn't do a good job. I'm going to give you a punishment. That's basically how you can sum up transactional. Okay. Versus transformational. I want you to be able to do this or think, oh my gosh, this happened to me last time in this situation. And so how can I apply what I learned here to this new situation? Okay. So this is our vision of what we're going to be. And I want you to be a part of it. But I don't want to have to sit here and give you rewards and punishments along the way. I want you to be able to feel inspired to be part of the overall goal and mission of the organization. Okay. Any questions about leadership theories? All right. So this YouTube video, this is the video that is in the managers versus leaders homework assignment. So we're not going to watch it in class because you're going to watch it on your own. In this video, the gentleman presents 10 different leadership styles or different characteristics about it, that what makes a good leader. Okay. And so I want you to watch the video as part of your homework assignment. And then you're going to think about what are the 3 most important qualities or characteristics that a leader should embody. Okay. There's no right or wrong answer. This is your own reflection on that. Okay. And then also, I want you to reflect on a time when you were managed and a time that you were led, and what are the differences between those instances. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about leadership styles, leadership or management functions, anything from chapter 2? Any comments? Yeah. It's not, because I worked on it this morning.
Oh, okay.
I need to be better about that and putting it in Canvas. I did a lot. So a lot of the slides looked like these. And so this morning I was working on adding more of the graphics to make it a little bit easier to read. But from what I'm hearing, but from your question, it would be more effective or helpful if you had this in advance, or if you had it while you're going through class, so you can follow it on your laptop. Yeah. Okay, cool. Absolutely. I will do my best to, if I make changes, to upload it. If I come to class and it's not there right before class, raise your hand and I can just add it real quick. Okay. You're not going to offend me by asking me to add it right then and there.
Yeah, because I was looking for it. I was like,
yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video and start a new one for